Welcome to the Chronicle Telegram's Commissioner Debate. I am Andy Young, editor of the Chronicle. With us today we have the two candidates for Lorain County Commissioner. Tom Williams is the incumbent. He's a Republican. State Representative Matt Lundy is the challenger. He's a Democrat. We will follow some simple rules during their debate. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer a question. His opponent will get 90 seconds for a rebuttal. At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 2 minutes for a closing statement. In all, we expect the debate to last 30 to 45 minutes. I will be asking questions, as will Brad Dicken, who covers county government for the Chronicle. Julie Wallace, the newspaper's managing editor, will act as a timekeeper, alerting the candidates when they have 15 seconds left for their answers or rebuttals and when their time is up. Earlier, I tossed a coin to determine which candidate would get the first question. It will be Mr. Lundy, and I'll ask it and then defer to Brad after I pose a question to Mr. Williams as well. Let's start with this one, Mr. Lundy. What would you do as a commissioner to lower Lorain County's unemployment rate, which remains above the statewide average? In particular, how, as a commissioner, would you end tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas, which is one of the items you list on a mailer sent to county households?
Okay. It's a two-part question. Actually, the first part is talking about jobs. The important thing is closing the skills gap. Our region is experiencing an issue where I can give you an example. If you're looking for an IT analyst, if you're looking for somebody who can actually fix the automated equipment in your factory, those individuals need to have the skills to do that. What we are running into is that we have individuals who are looking for work, however, they don't have the skills to match up with that. I think it's important for residents to know that we do have dollars available through workforce development. Actually, you can receive about $5,000 a year to receive training so that if you're underemployed or unemployed, so that you can actually have your skills brought up to match with the skills that are desired by that employer. In fact, I was having this conversation with Roy Church just the other week, and he said, Matt, you nailed it. The issue that we're running into is having employers identify to us early enough what those skills are that they need so that we can actually prepare them, whether it's through the vocational school or for Lorain County Community College, so that we can put them then into those jobs when those jobs become available. So that's answering the first part of your question. As far as being opposed to tax breaks for businesses that ship jobs overseas, I will tell you that consistently in my town hall meetings, I've heard residents say to me, why in the world does government continue to provide tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas? I also hear that out there when I'm amongst members of the public in the community. So the position that I have is that that is a question that will be brought up. That question will be brought up. You're here seeking assistance from government. We want to know, are you seeking this assistance at the same time that you're shipping jobs overseas? And I think that's a fair question to ask.
Well, let me follow up by asking, what do the commissioners have to do with that?
Well, I think the important part here is that we work on economic development all the time. And I want to be able to say to those employers who are considering shipping jobs overseas and asking for a tax break at the same time, that that is something that makes our support for such an initiative even harder to support.
So would you oppose giving tax abatements to companies that ship jobs overseas then? Would that be a manner in which the commissioners could do that?
I would have strong reservations about a company receiving tax breaks if they're shipping jobs overseas. We need to be performing those jobs here in Lorain County.
Mr. Williams, I will follow up with a similar question, again noting that Lorain County's unemployment rate is higher than the statewide rate. What have you done as a commissioner to lower that rate?
Actually, working with economic development, working with local companies to try to help them expand here and retain jobs. We've done that as a board of commissioners through economic development in Team Lorain County, and also working with Lorain Community College and JVS in order to improve the skill levels of our residents. As a commissioner, just by myself, I have reached out to companies doing cold calls. We have one company by the name of Enviro. They're going through, they are looking at locations currently in Lorain County. We're going to have a conversation here coming up in the next few weeks. that could open up additional companies to come in by using a service that they provide, which actually treats waste products and then turns it into a Class A product. Now, the difference between them and another company that was in Lorraine County News is they do it in a zero pressure building, which eliminates the smell, keeps it clean, and provides green jobs. In this case here, the employees would have an average wage of around $20 an hour.
Okay, but can you give me an example of a company that brought jobs to the county as a result of some action by the commissioners?
It brought jobs actually coming in here today, under my term, no. We've had help companies actually expand in the county, companies in North Ridgeville. We actually had the governor come in 2011 with the expansion of their facility. Now, I want to go back to the one question, if I can, where you asked Mr. Lundy about, and he, in his literature, he says he would end tax breaks for companies. My question is, where have we started or where have we done it? We haven't. But the Board of Commissioners does play a role in the enterprise zones, and we have 11 of them in the county. Now, 9 of them are controlled by the county, and one in Lorraine and one by the city of Elyria. But the Board of Commissioners have no say.
Lorraine County's government has experienced significant budget woes in recent years, and voters have rejected efforts to raise the sales tax, even as revenues from other sources, such as interest income and local government funds from the state, decline. How would you deal with budget shortfalls going forward?
Okay, that question is to me, correct?
It is.
All right. Well, what we've done is we receive revenue from the actual casino revenue coming in. That's helped offset county levels. We went through, when I came into office, actually prior to me taking office a month before, Betty Blair wanted to impose a tax increase. I fought against that. I took a look at the budget, went through, found out what the wish list was, took it back down to the needs, and we've been able to have an $8 million carryover for every year that I've been a county commissioner. So I believe that we're doing an effective job as a board now, having the checks and balances in government to keep it balanced, hire deputies, maintain services, and stay in black.
I continue to hear my opponent talk about this $8 million surplus. You know, as a manager of the county budget, what that money is that's actually carry forward money. That's carry forward dollars, because what you have to be able to do is you've got to be able to pay your bills at the beginning of the year. You keep positioning this as a surplus. That's not the case. Those are carry forward dollars to keep government operating. You don't start collecting the property taxes until February rolls around. So let me just make that correction. Talking about budget shortfalls, I think what we need to be doing is that we need to have an ongoing group, whether it's an assembly of accountants, people with background in finance, people with background in marketing, where we are looking constantly at what initiatives we're probably going to have to bring to the county, to the voters, to help fill some of the budget shortfalls that we're having. So anytime that we're talking about bringing a levy forward, I think we need to be preparing for that year-round in making our case. The important thing that needs to be done here is that, you know, you can't just simply cut your way to progress or prosperity. You need to look for ways to generate additional revenue. And a lot of that, I think, can be done by making the case that we can actually grow the dollars by seeking grants that are out there and by seeking federal dollars, matching dollars, sometimes 50-50 or 80-20.
Well, let me ask you this, because voters hire Lorraine County commissioners to make board decisions. So if the county's general fund budget reaches a point where there becomes a need for either large-scale cuts, layoffs, or the other option is simply to impose a sales tax. You guys have had voters reject them multiple times. So would you be willing to impose a sales tax if it became necessary? And if not, where would you make cuts if county voters reject such a sales tax increase?
Well, I have said, I'm on the record stating that I will not impose a sales tax. I think when the Board of Commissioners have done that in the past, I think that's created ill will with the voters. I think it's been a short-term gain. As we saw, it was quickly overturned by the voters a year later. The voters want to make sure that their voice is heard. Now, you want to talk about making cuts, there's no question that we have to operate with whatever funds they make available. And I think what's important to point out here is that it's a team approach when we come to balancing the budget. We just went through a really tough recession, and we were able to stay within the guardrails and within the parameters of our budget because elected officials stepped up, department heads stepped up. This isn't something with my opponent I hear lots of talk about, I did this, I did that. It's not an I, it's a we. And the reason that we were able to maintain a stable budget is because department heads stepped up, elected officials stepped up, and everybody operated within their budget so that we could get through the recession.
But I guess the question I have is, if you have to make cuts, you're not going to impose a sales tax, where in county government would you recommend that you and your fellow commissioners cut?
Well, to answer your question, as I said, this is a budget process, and I'll give you an example. I used to be a TV news director. After those planes hit the towers, we knew that we were not going to be bringing in the revenue that we used to bring in. So we looked at that and said, our revenue for this year is probably going to be close to where it was 4 years ago. And then the department heads had to make that decision. That's a collective decision. So I want individuals to come to me, make their recommendations, then I will take their recommendations into account, and we will go from there.
Tom?
Okay. Well, I have a history of saying I would not impose a sales tax. In fact, it's been tried since I've been on the Board of Commissioners, and I've stated I'm against it. I'm also against a emergency sales tax increase, which was done in 2009, and it only takes 2 commissioners to do it. And I believe, me being on the board, I'm the checks and balance, and that's why it hasn't gone through. Now, to answer your question, if we're not going to impose a tax, where would we cut? Well, the Ohio Revised Code gives us mandated services that we have to provide. So when you start the budgetary item, you have to take a look at what the cost is going to be for those mandatory services, and then take that off of the budget. Then the question is, how much of a deficit are we looking at? And based on that number, we go through and we look at what's important to the residents, how's it going to impact the quality of life in Lorain County, and then we go through and we work on it that way. And just one thing, I do say I, but when I say I, it's I worked with.
All right, I believe the next question goes to Mr. Williams. In the dispute between the county and the judges over where to house the adult probation department, you favored the judge's argument that the department should be moved from the old county courthouse to the Justice Center's undeveloped 5th floor. Are you therefore willing to let the courthouse fall into further disrepair, or do you have a plan to preserve it?
Well, taking a look, we have so much money that we can work with. And by going through and out of all the areas that the Board of Commissioners were considering, the courthouse, a property on Broad Street, and the 5th floor of the Justice Center, I believe the 5th floor of the Justice Center is the most cost effective. It also allows us to have a true hall of justice, and we can go through and provide all our security needs at one building instead of multiple buildings. Now, the courthouse is a facility that is recognized. It's a trade landmark in the city of Elyria. We would have to go through and board it up, winterize the property, and then maintain the outer shell. If you go inside the building, you will see that the building is no longer the grand building that it was back in the 20s and 30s, but something that was renovated back in the 70s and 80s. So maintain the outside of the building and hopefully come up with grants that come through the federal or state level to possibly go through and renovate it at a later date.
Well, unfortunately, we're in the middle of a legal battle, and the only folks winning here are the attorneys, making some nice legal fees. I really feel that a lot of this, I would think, had there been cooler heads at the table, maybe we wouldn't be where we're at today. I think it's important to point out that my opponent, I thought, set a very bad tone for the conversations in the first budget discussions when he first came in as commissioner. He actually referred to our judges as thugs in robes. I don't think that sets a very positive tone for the discussion and the relationship going forward, especially when the justice system and the sheriffs make up about 75% of our budget. Also, in an interview with the Toledo Blade, the commissioner has said that he wouldn't necessarily be opposed to the courthouse being demolished. I believe that courthouse represents our history. It's an important part of this county. We need to make an effort to make sure that we actually have conversations with Bill Burr, the Lorain County Historical Society, and that we make sure that there's a good roof on the building, there's good windows, that the building is a strong building, but we need to maintain some type of services out of that building. We need to keep it operational. The conditions there, they're not good. We all know they're not good, and they need to be vastly improved. Employees shouldn't be working in those conditions, and they need to be improved. But I want to see the courthouse stay in place, and I also think it's important to have a good working relationship with the judges. Unfortunately, this has become a legal matter, and I think only the courts right now will resolve it.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question of Mr. Lundy. What would you do differently from Mr. Williams to resolve this dispute? Each side is spending taxpayer dollars for outside lawyers, as you noted. Could you forge an agreement to stop that bleeding? And if not, why should voters replace Mr. Williams with you?
Okay. Well, I think my approach would have been different. I've heard my opponent at numerous other events and before editorial boards talk about how he took his argument to the newspapers. I realize in your industry, a confrontation sells a lot of papers, and that's good for your business. But I don't think that's the way that we should do business. I think instead of having disputes through the papers, I think you actually sit down and you have those discussions. Sometimes the reality is that some things have to be resolved legally, and that's what we find ourselves in right now. Do I think that the judges have the authority to tell the commissioners where they can move people or place people? No, I don't believe they have that authority, but they believe that they have the authority to make these moves and to make these requests, and that's where it's going to have to be resolved legally. The difference between myself and my opponent is that when we have disputes with the judges, I can tell you that I'm going to get out of my chair, out of my office, and go over, we're going to sit down and have a conversation. I'm a big believer, and I tell people all the time, that even if we disagree, we've got to keep the conversation going, because at some point we can hopefully get this resolved, and get it resolved without the attorneys making all kinds of money.
Well, I'd like to go back, what he's talking about is from 2011 when he ordered their budget, and I was able to get back $800,000 from the judges. Also, in regards to the actual courthouse, you had judges that came over, and during the Board of Commissioners meeting, stated that the other commissioners needed to be more like me and more level-headed. Now, with that said, I worked with the judges. I spoke with them. I tried to get the Jerry Ennis back on the case. However, they already had legal counsel, and their legal counsel went against it. I worked with them on other issues to save the county money, and I believe that the judges are in the right on this case here. The difference is sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and sometimes after having dialogue over and over, and when a judge orders a budget and signs it, and the check is going from the auditor over to the judge, you have to stand up. And by me standing up to him in 2011, again, $800,000 came back to the general fund.
Now, Matt, you were talking earlier about the problem of having this discourse. And you said in the past that you believe the commissioners need to work to find consensus for a unified front dealing with county issues. Doesn't having an active debate in the public better serve the public, give them a better understanding of the issues involved and the performance that their elected representatives are doing? Yeah. Shouldn't those disagreements be aired for the public to see?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. You know, there are going to be disagreements. There should be disagreements. I mean, that's what creates a healthy democracy. I'm just saying that we should be looking at ways in which we can work together and not have so much confrontation. It seems like we have confrontation instead of conversations. I'm a big believer that you and I can disagree, you know, and we end up at the end of the day respectfully disagreeing. You're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to mine. And as a commissioner, this is something that, as I said, may not be popular with you as a reporter, but when you come to me and say, why did Commissioner Kalo or Commissioner Kokoski make this decision? Don't you think that was kind of crazy to come up with that idea? I'm going to tell you, please talk with Commissioner Kokoski or Kalo about that issue. I'm going to speak for what my position is. I don't think it's healthy to end up pitting individuals against your colleagues. The best way to explain this is that in Columbus, for me to get a bill passed out of the House, I need 49 other individuals to be on that bill with me to get it passed, yes votes. As a county commissioner, I only need one other vote. And sometimes that vote may come from you, Brad. The other day, it may come from you, Andy. So why in the world do I want to throw you underneath the bus? I've been at plenty of township trustees meetings where I just sit there, just amazed that a commissioner would stand in front of a room and you know, run down his opponents. Not his opponents, I'm sorry, his fellow colleagues that he needs to work with, as though they were opponents. So we are going to have disagreements, and I will tell you that I am coming to this commission to lead, not to follow. My colleagues will tell you in Avon Lake, when I was on city council, they said, Matt, we just can't figure out how you're going to vote. Sometimes you come in the room and you're with these council members, or sometimes you come in the room and you're with those council members. I try to do my homework up until voting time, and then at that time I make my decision.
Now, as commissioner, I go through, and I believe everything should be aired out during a public meeting. That way the general public understands what's going on. 95% of the time, the Board of Commissioners agree. Brad, you've been there, and you hear yay, yay, yay when it comes to budgetary issues. Where we have our disagreements is when we're talking about tax increases. Today, we had a good conversation, a friendly conversation that went 2-1. It was in regards to the crime lab. I believe that we should use a private company that is going to be a certified lab, maintain samples that test positive for a year, and offer multiple locations. The Board of Commissioners believe that we should have the county offer these services. We went back and forth on it. Very friendly, and you can watch it on cable TV this weekend. And it was a good dialogue. At the end of the day, 2-1, I voted against it. Now, what Mr. Lundy is referring to out in the townships is I'm stating, giving justification why I voted a certain way. And if he feels that I'm talking bad about an individual or putting him down, it's probably because he's agreeing with me that I was right on an issue. There's no discontent between Commissioner Kalo and Commissioner Koski and myself. Again, we get along 95% of the time. It's the important issues about budget and tax increases where we have lively debates.
Speaking of your lively debates, Tom, you've often clashed with their fellow commissioners and other public officials, thugs and rogues, for instance. You've been accused of making inflammatory comments. You once said that if there's only one person you trusted in county government, your now former assistant. Does this sort of rhetoric undermine the ability of commissioners and other officials to work together, do the people's business?
No, I don't think so, because when we're going through, we're having these dialogue. Now, what happened in 2011, we have to remember, there were secret meetings going on, meetings that I was held out of. Issue with Amherst Township and the residents in Hidden Valley. Working through the county administrator, which is the Board of Commissioners go-to guy to kind of help the board get through things, I set up a meeting with the mayor of Lorain, the residents of Amherst Township, township trustees, and Jim Cortez, the county administrator, and myself. The Board of Commissioners went through and actually held a meeting, which would be considered a sunshine violation, because there was an agreement in talks on a contract that the Board of Commissioners have to approve in order for funding to go through. And in that, I felt that it was not in the best interest of the residents or the township officials to have that secret meeting. When we were talking about St. Joe's and they went to Columbus in order to ask for additional money from the state that the county would be held accountable for, they excluded me from those meetings. When they went down there, Senator Manning actually asked, well, where's the third commissioner? And when I asked the question where the meeting was going to be held, Commissioner Koski said, we don't want you there. So those were the disagreements. That happened in 2011 and going into 2012. After that, I believe that cooler heads have prevailed, and we're on board. We understand where each other works and what we believe in.
I think I have a response.
Yes.
Kind of that question. That, you know, where the issue has been is that when we wanted to bring levy questions before the voters of this county, Tom, I think that the commissioners feel like you have been disagreeing with them just for the sake of making a statement about having an anti-tax agenda. You know, if we're talking about the transit levy, I remember I was at one of the commissioner meetings, and I can tell you as a state representative, I haven't been able to be at the commissioners meetings because I'm in Columbus on Wednesdays. I'm sitting in Columbus and voting and in committee. But I remember being at the one meeting where there was a discussion, and then the decision was made to, I believe at that time, put forth the crime lab levy issue. And there's just been a lot of conversation about the importance of everybody working together. And then all of a sudden you said that you weren't going to be supporting that. And I know Commissioner Kokoski was quite upset with that. So I think what's been frustrating is these disagreements. You say that there's been disagreements over tax issues. Because I think you see levy questions as raising taxes. You know, I see the levy questions as promoting democracy, giving individuals in this county a chance to make a decision. These are the people that we work for, and we need their feedback. And if it comes back 60-40 defeat, they told us you didn't package it properly. But it's difficult when you have individuals who are trying to bring about good government and to make government work for the people instead of positioning everything where you're basically anti-tax, anti-government.
All right. For Mr. Lundy, right? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that Mr. Williams has done as a commissioner that you would praise him for?
Well, as I think, you know, as he's pointed out, and he makes a very valid point because we see it in Columbus all the time, where individuals, for the most part, end up voting in the affirmative, you know, together. I know that Tom has been very concerned about transparency. I'm the former reporter in the room here, along with current reporters. So, you know, I believe strongly in transparency as much as you do, Tom. I pushed that issue in Columbus with Jobs Ohio, which operates in the dark with hundreds of millions of dollars. I will continue to push for transparency as a commissioner. You know, we had talked a couple weeks ago how I'd like to see more information put online so that individuals actually know what's going to be voted on before they get there and then see the documents later. So I agree with Tom on the transparency issue, and I will continue to promote transparency because I believe strongly in it. And I can also tell you that I do not support so-called administrative meetings. Public business needs to be conducted in the public.
Well, I appreciate that, and actually, you know, at the Township Association's candidates night in 2012, Commissioner Kokoski stated that I have improved transparency since I became a member. Are you asking me the same question about Mr. Lundy, or?
Well, it's your response, but you could certainly address
So,
that issue.
but
And we'll give you extra time if there's a lot of problems.
But transparency is an important issue. You know, I've walked out of meetings on that when I didn't feel that we were in the right session, and I appreciate you recognizing that. Thank you.
If I might ask a question to Mr. Williams, a citizens group has proposed a switch in the form of county government.
Mm-hmm.
It wants representatives to a county council elected from 7 districts, arguing that some areas of the county are underrepresented. Under the current form of county government, all 3 commissioners are elected at large. What do you think of the idea of 7-member board? And if you don't favor it, why did you sign a petition to get it on the ballot?
Well, I signed a petition to get on the ballot so people could actually vote on it and decide, because it is changing the government. As Brad knows, I oppose legalizing marijuana. I also signed that petition to put it on the ballot. Now, it really depends on the residents and what they feel, if they need more local representation. I can tell you, I'm all over the county. People are happy to see me in Rochester. They're happy to see me in the townships out in Avon Lake. And I'm told that they see me during non-election years, and they're happy with that. So this issue, when it goes on the ballot, the people are going to be able to decide, do they want more local representation? And if they do, they'll be able to vote yes or no on it.
Okay, you didn't answer my question,
I'm
which is,
sorry.
do you favor it or not?
Do I favor it? I believe I do an effective job, and I don't believe that it's needed. But again, it would be up to the residents to decide if they need more local representation.
I think what's interesting when I hear this discussion from Commissioner Williams is that he talks about wanting to sign petitions so that voters have a right to decide on what they want to do. That's why I find it odd when you voted no on the crime lab levy coming before voters or the transit levy coming before voters, because I would think that would be the same case of where the voters would have a chance to decide what they want to do. Also, I can tell you Matt Lundy is not going to sign a petition if I don't support an issue. I did not sign the legalization of marijuana petition. I realize I'm in the minority on that one. And also did not sign and support the county government reform. We don't have corruption in Lorain County. I know that my opponent keeps wanting to refer back to the days of Michael Ross. Those days are in the past. I think that we have individuals who've been working with integrity in the offices, and we don't have county corruption like Cuyahoga County does or did. Also, I think it's important to point out that I've seen gerrymandering in the Columbus capital when we were putting together the redistricting plan for the state of Ohio. It's not a pretty picture. This is going to divide up the county significantly. Also, you're going to eliminate 5 elected offices. I've always said that appointed positions are more political than elected positions, because I served as an appointment of Mayor Bill Grayson Elyria. You know, I didn't have to keep city council happy. I didn't have to keep the public happy. There was just one person I had to keep happy, the person who appointed me. But I didn't approach the job that way, but people can approach it that way. So when you have elected positions, those individuals are more accountable. That's an area that I'm very concerned about with that plan.
Now I guess the next question is to you. The parking deck attached to the county administration building is in state of repair, as are numerous other buildings and vehicles owned by the county. Commissioners have taken out a loan to pay for some limited repairs and upgrades, but that's a short-term solution. How should the county pay for its capital needs going forward?
Well, as I've said before, that's where we need to continue to make our case to the residents. The reality is that we have very few deputies out on the roads right now. So, you know, road patrols are certainly more important. We have a justice system that we see that's constantly growing. We have needs to take care of there too. We have stormwater issues that are taking place. All the water flows north, ends up in our northern communities. So at this point, I'm just telling you candidly, fixing that parking garage is not on a high priority list. I think that's a tough sell to tell individuals that we need more money for a parking garage right now. I want to stress, however, I do not support all kinds of surface parking going into downtown Elyria. I know the mayor and the administration, they certainly don't want that either. We need to be able to grow downtown Elyria, grow it. We don't want to be putting parking places all over the community.
Okay. Just to go back, when I signed the petition, that was me as an individual signing a petition to allow people to have a voice. When it's levies, we're talking about your dollars. And with the crime lab, the state actually offers the same services at no cost to the county. Now going to the parking garage, you're right, we have a limited budget, and with interest rates being very low, we went through and we did do a loan in order to provide maintenance on the parking garage and the other buildings throughout the county. What we're hoping is that we'll continue to see an increase in the revenue coming in from the sales tax, which we've seen over year after year as the economy improves, and then we'll be able to do long-term projects.
Tom, I'm not sure you answered the question earlier about if there's anything that Matt Lundy has done in the State House of Representatives.
Well, I asked if, you know, and Andy kind of said, well, go back, but it would be the transparency issue as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, both of us have
We were transparent about that, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know who's supposed to get the question. Williams, I think, Mr. Williams.
Well, he just answered that one in about 3 questions, so, 3 words, so.
Okay, well, let's start with, in a debate last week, you said commissioners should focus on issues they have control over, not things like fracking and prison privatization. So why did you try to get the other commissioners to endorse a resolution asking a private employer in the county, Cameco, to respect workers' rights to unionize, what control over private sector unionization do commissioners have?
Well, on that, what we were looking at is there's multiple agreements going around the actual county through cities regarding PLAs and different union contracts with government. We've had issues where employees have contacted the Board of Commissioners and they were asking for a resolution, which we've done for other non-government agencies, basically saying that we support them in their right to go through and unionize, which is under the Ohio Revised Code. Commissioners often do these resolutions, and I was asked to bring it to the Board of Commissioners, and that's why I brought it up for discussion.
I'm still trying to process how a commissioner is able to abstain from the vote on that resolution. That simply made no sense to me. I only thought you could abstain if you had a conflict of interest. I'm still trying to figure out how that was made an official vote. Maybe Jerry Ennis can explain it.
He could.
I will tell you that I think it's important for a commissioner to represent the views of the county residents. Nothing says that if the governor wants to be able to privatize the turnpike, that a county commissioner shouldn't be out there simply saying this is not going to be good for the residents of my county. We have 5, 6 turnpike exits in Lorain County. We're going to be greatly impacted if the fees are increased on the turnpike. Privatization of the prisons. We have residents who live in this county who work at those prisons, and if it ends up being privatized, I can guarantee you that they're going to be making a lot less money, and I don't think the area is going to be quite as secure because the level of training, the skills level is not quite there that you see with paid and well-trained guards. You know, I support collective bargaining as well too. This is a strong labor county. I was very surprised that Tom would be opposed to a resolution that was sent to Columbus on Senate Bill 5 that was opposing Senate Bill 5. He voted no on that. Congresswoman Betty Sutton had a bill that was called Bring Jobs Home, which was dealing with companies not getting tax breaks if they outsource jobs. We've heard this topic before earlier. And Commissioner Williams also voted on that. So I believe that he's out of touch with our working families here in Lorain County.
If I could, on the Bring Jobs Home Act, that was a nice title for the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, where they were looking at changing a federal code. And in both cases, the Board of Commissioners, Mr. Kalo, brought it up from the floor and wanted a resolution passed with no discussion on it. And I don't believe that you go through and pass something to find out what's in it later.
Tom, one of the complaints your fellow commissioners have had about you is that you sometimes ambush them with issues by showing up with and bringing issues up from the floor, and then putting a fairly quick decision upon that.
I would say a fairly quick position. I had actually told them that we could go through and postpone it. Lori has asked, for time to do research. I said I don't have an issue with it. As far as being ambushed, I think one of the things that come up is when the Board of Commissioners then stood up against this, wanted to go through and actually create a land bank that wanted to take money away from schools and other levy agencies. And I thought we should have a conversation on it. I believe that we bring up the topics during the board committee meetings, have dialogue, and if we need to get more information, continue to dialogue in the following week. But it should be brought up in front of the public.
The commissioner had brought up the issue of the land bank. I guess we are different in this position. I certainly would have voted to fund the land bank and not voted against that. I think the land bank has done a great job in this county. We've improved a lot of neighborhoods. But I think this is where another difference comes in between myself and my opponent, is that I think he saw the short-term impact of what was going to happen. There's no question that the schools were impacted when you have the delinquent fees that take place. Of that $100, I think they were normally going to get, the schools were going to get 95 out of that. I think the recorder and the treasurer got 5 out of that. Now the land bank was going to get $5 out of that. So when you look at the overall picture, the schools were still getting the majority of that. but it's the short-term and the long-term effect. The short-term effect is that, yes, it did have a local impact. I know Paul Rigda had indicated to me it was going to amount to about one teacher's job being lost, and I understand that. But I think when we get the dilapidated homes down, when we get the drug houses down, whether they're in Lorraine, whether they're in Elyria, whether they're in the township, that helps to improve property values. That gives neighbors, that gives buyers greater confidence in those areas. It helps to bring up the values of the homes, the value of the whole county with the homes, and that helps overall with the schools and with generating revenue for the county overall.
Again, on that, the reason for the no vote, superintendents were against it. They were calling for the vote, and they wanted to take money from the schools and other levy agencies with no input from them.
We've been at it for about 40 minutes, a little bit longer. I might ask one more question and then have the candidates sum up, if that's okay. And I guess I'll put it to Mr. Lundy. I think he's the next one to get the question. You've spoken of trying to establish commissioners as facilitators for countywide initiatives, in particular on matters such as economic activity and tourism along the lakefront and public transit. Lakefront cities such as Lorraine and Avon Lake have been at this for a long time without, especially in the case of Lorraine, a whole lot of success. What could you do to do better than they are?
Well, I think there's strength in collaboration. In fact, I've had some brief discussions with the mayors about the Lakefront Lorraine County proposal that I'm putting on the table. I think if we can get Vermillion, we can get Lorraine, Sheffield Lake, Avon Lake around the table. We bring in the Port Authority, we bring in the Metro Parks, we sit down and have a discussion with the Tourism Bureau as well too. And then we have that discussion with Congresswoman Capter's office, and she primarily represents the shoreline. You know, there are federal grants that are out there. Some of them involve matching money through the Department of the Economic Development Administration, rather, Department of Commerce, Interior Department. And we can start talking about how do we want to develop a lakefront, take a look at the lakefront, do a land use plan that's never been done in this county, and collectively look at it as one big picture. And then we say, okay, if you stop and vote in Lorraine, you know, could you possibly have dinner here in Sheffield Lake? And I've had a mayor who's told me that he's had several people come to him now saying they'd love to have a restaurant somewhere on the lakefront, but he can't seem to give them the proper place to find it. Resources are limited. This is where you share your resources. This is where you bring to the table what you can bring to the table, but it's not just money, you bring ideas to the table. And then we collectively look at a way that we can apply for grants, planning grants, there's planning grants money out there, and put together a strategic plan. We have an asset that most of the counties in this state don't have, and we're not utilizing it. And I think if you ask anybody on the street corner, they would say, we got this lake over here, we could do more with it. So let's start doing something with it, but let's do it collectively, pull our resources together, and then we can make it possible. If Sheffield Lake can't afford to pay that much, Avon Lake can't afford to pay that much, Lorraine, everybody brings those resources together, and then we have an overall plan that actually links community to say, here's how you can enjoy our lakefront in Lorraine County, maybe catch a Crushers game, stay at our hotel, shop at the mall, whatever it may be. But it's going to be a collective effort, and I think Lakefront Lorraine County would be a great project, and I'm hoping I'll have the opportunity to work on that.
He's had 8 years as a state rep to work on that. He hasn't done it. It also reminds me of Mr. Nunes, who ran for county commissioner 10 years ago. This was his plan as well. If you want to improve the county and improve the different cities, people need jobs. We have to come up with ways to work with jobs. Team Lorraine County has hired a new director. Hopefully that's going to help us reach out to different companies in order to bring jobs here and help companies expand. As a commissioner, I've gone through budgetary authority, worked on the budget. We've added resources, we've added deputies, and that's the primary responsibility of the commissioner's budgetary authority.
All right, well, let's let the candidates have their final say with their closing statements, and I believe Mr. Williams gets the first one.
Well, thank you. I always see Brad every Wednesday. Andy, it's good to see you and the rest of the Chronicle staff. As your commissioner, when I came into office in 2010, I made a promise not to impose tax increase, to be your voice of the county, to represent the entire county, and to be your fiscal watchdog. I believe in my first term, I've done that. We've gone through and we've actually took a projected deficit, and you don't have to take my word for it. You could go to the October 19th meeting notes and see where Commissioner Kukowski actually stated that there was a $10 to $12 million deficit projected. We turned that, put the board working together, having the checks and balances, turned it into a surplus, hired deputies, hired staff, maintained services, and stayed in the black without raising the sales tax. I want to continue to be your voice. I want to continue to be your watchdog. And as always, if you have any questions, reach out to me on my cell phone number, 440-986-0327. Again, 440-986-0327. And thank you.
I also want to thank the Chronicle Telegram for this opportunity and for Tom making the time so we could hold this debate here today. I believe that I've been accountable to the residents of Lorain County. I've served in the legislature for 8 years, and during those 8 years I've held 70 Lundy Listen sessions so that I can get feedback from you, because I know that I work for you. I've served in a district that's a 50-50 district. It's evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans, and I believe I've been elected to that district and re-elected to that district several times because individuals see me as somebody who works together and is willing to work across the aisle. I'm proud of the work that we've done in Columbus, and I say we, not I, because we've passed bipartisan bills that help seniors with their property taxes. We've helped with a college tuition freeze for 2 years. We made it possible to build new schools in this state so we could put students in new classrooms and put Ohioans back to work. We also worked together when we made sure that jobs were coming from Mexico here to Lorain County at Ford Motor Company. So a lot of good work has been done, and that's been bipartisan work, and that's what I believe in. I believe that I have a lot of experience and good experience. Columbus has taught me well, and now I want to put that experience to work for you, and I'm going to continue to hold my town hall meetings, my Lundy Listen sessions, because I work for you and I want your feedback. I also believe that we shouldn't be focused on whether it's a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. We need to be focused on whether it's a good idea, whether it's a good idea for our county. We have a lot of individuals who need to get to work, but we need to match what's available out there in the workplace with the jobs, applicants, and make sure that the skills gap is closed so that we can get individuals in this county back to work by getting them in for workforce training through the community college and through the vocational school. I want you to know that I believe strongly in working together, and I want to have that opportunity to serve as your Lorain County Commissioner. I'm asking for your vote on November 4th. I believe that the time has come for us to roll up our sleeves and work together, because when we work together, our families win and the county wins.